Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So this video is just a quick little preview for the Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos Jr. card. This card of course goes down on the 27th of November, takes place at the Madison Square Garden in New York, and it will be televised on DAZN. I'll start from the top to bottom. So main event, Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos Jr. Of course, Teofimo, the WBA, IBF and WBO lightweight champion. George Kambosos is the IBF mandatory. Now going into this fight, George Kambosos has talked a really good game. He seems confident. I think he's genuinely coming to fight, which is good. And I've actually seen some people give George Kambosos somewhat of a chance in this fight. However, I give George Kambosos slim to none when it comes to his chances in this fight. And I think Slim just left town, quite frankly. I've seen George Kambosos fight a couple of times. Once against Lee Selby, who is a blown up featherweight. He really struggled in that fight. He won, but he didn't look good. And Lee Selby actually kind of not buzzed him, but, you know, stopped him in his tracks a few times with some snappy counter punches. And Lee Selby's not a puncher. Kambosos, I also saw his fight with Mickey Bay, and he really struggled in that fight. Mickey Bay, a former lightweight champion, but way past his best. He won that fight by a split decision. So the two step-up fights Kambosos has had, he's not really impressed me, quite frankly. And honestly, you know, I know he's IBF Mando, but if we're looking at the lightweight division and ranking a top 10, is Kambosos really a top 10 level fighter? I don't really think so, quite frankly. You know, he's a good, honest pro. He comes to fight. He's relatively aggressive. He's a come-forward fighter primarily. He does try to, you know, he tries to jab his way in, throw a few feints, give you a few different angles, but ultimately he's quite repetitive. And the biggest issue for him in this fight is that he doesn't really have a hand speed to match Teofimo, and he doesn't really have any power. Kambosos is not really a puncher, so I can't really see how he wins this fight. He's a pretty basic pressure fighter, does maintain a decent work rate, but ultimately he comes in straight lines. Defensively, his guard is really wide. Sometimes his hands are down, things like that. Ultimately, I think he's the perfect type of opponent to make Teofimo Lopez look like $1 million. Teofimo Lopez to me is a quick-handed counter-puncher with real power. I think that's his style. And I think Kambosos is going to complement that style. Kambosos, I think, is tough. I think he will hang around for like 4 or 5 rounds. But ultimately, I would be shocked if George Kambosos Jr. makes it late in this fight, let alone goes to the distance. The only chance Kambosos has, in my estimation, is if that Teofimo Lopez is completely dead at the weight or he's injured. If those two, if they don't occur, I don't think Kambosos has a chance whatsoever in this fight. It's not like we can even say, yeah, Kambosos, he's not the most skilled, but at least he's got a killer punch. He doesn't really have that punching power either, so I just can't see Kambosos giving Teo any real problems, if I'm being honest. So, you know, this fight has been on the horizon for so long now. We've waited basically a year almost for this fight. But in all honesty, the fight itself isn't that great. Teo should win, and Teo should make short work of George Kambosos Jr. Listen, the weight is interesting going into this fight in regards to Teofimo. I think this might be Teo's last fight at lightweight, to be honest. I think he'll wait to see what happens with Josh Taylor. But all I will say is this. Don't be surprised if Teofimo misses weight with this fight. Even a couple of years ago, we was hearing how hard it was for Teo to make weight. We're now like a couple of years later with a long layoff, with injuries and, you know, apparently having COVID. Maybe Teo struggles with the weight. Maybe he misses weight. I think that's something to look out for. But nevertheless, I still think, even if Teo's not optimal going into this fight, I still think Teo wins this one comfortably. I think he should score a decent knockout and he should look good doing it. We'll see what Kambosos can bring to the table. Maybe I'm underestimating him. Maybe he's one of those guys who raises his level as he steps up, but I've not really seen anything from George Kambosos to fill me with any confidence, but we'll see how he gets on. Also on this card, now this is actually a pretty good fight, Azinga Fusile versus Kenichi Ogawa. This is actually quite a good fight. This is for the IBF, the vacant IBF super featherweight title. Now originally it was supposed to be a Rakhimov versus Kenichi Ogawa, but Rakhimov picked up an injury, so he's now out. So the next best ranked contender, Azinga Fusile, is fighting Ogawa for that vacant title, and apparently Rakhimov is going to fight the winner. Azinga Fusile is a really good boxer puncher. He's got nice solid fundamentals. He hits relatively hard, coming off a really good win over Martin J. Ward, where he knocked out Ward. Ogawa is your typical Japanese fighter. He's a tough dude. He likes to come forwards, maintain a good work rate, good body puncher. He gave Tevin Farmer some real trouble a few years ago. I think he fought Tevin Farmer. Let me look. Yeah, he fought Tevin Farmer a few years ago. Gave him some real trouble. A lot of people at the time called this fight a robbery, but in my opinion it wasn't. I felt it was close, but nevertheless, Ogawa, decent fighter, likes to come forwards, likes to apply pressure, likes to work the body, and he's fighting a boxer puncher in Azinga Fusile, who can also really counter punch as well. So stylistically, this should be a good fight. I am picking Fusile to win this one. I think Fusile is actually quite a good fighter. His only loss came at the hands of Rakhimov, actually, and that fight was very entertaining all of the way through. Fusile was winning, in my opinion, until the stoppage, and in regards to the stoppage, there are some very bizarre circumstances surrounding that, so if you look into that, you can do, but nevertheless, Fusile is a good fighter, a good contender, a little underrated. I expect him to beat Kenichi Ogawa and to become the new IBF super featherweight champion, but nevertheless a good fight. We also have the prospect Raymond Ford. He's fighting Felix Carballo. Carballo recently fought Shakur Stevenson about a year ago or so. Raymond Ford's a prospect. He's okay. He's got a decent style, to be honest. And Felix Carballo is a pretty good opponent at this stage of Raymond Ford's career. I think Raymond Ford's coming off a win over the British dude, Reece Bellotti. Yeah. Raymond Ford is okay. He's not too bad to watch. I expect Raymond to win this fight, but it's a decent little test at this stage of his career. You also have Rishat Mati, who's a prospect. He's fighting a dude by the name of Nicholas Pablo Demario. I've never seen Demario fight. I've seen Rishat Mati. He seems quite basic, but he does hit relatively hard. He does have a good style to watch. So, that could be decent, I guess. That could be decent. You also have a return of the big Chinese southpaw heavyweight, Zhili Zhang. He's fighting Craig Lewis, who's a journeyman. Zhili Zhang, I mean, he's in his late 30s. He was actually quite a good amateur. He medalled in one of the Olympics, maybe two actually. I think he's got 2 bronze medals, something like that. Zhili Zhang, though, as a pro, he's really not impressive. He's a big 6'9" lump, southpaw, can barely move out of his own way. He's basically a knockout waiting to happen, but he is entertaining. In his last fight, he fought Jerry Forrest. He dropped Jerry Forrest twice, looked on the verge of stopping him, then all of a sudden he lost his gas tank and Jerry Forrest beat the shit out of him. And honestly, he was quite lucky to get a draw in that fight, if memory serves me correct. It's a shame, really. I mean, we should really be getting the rematch between Zhili Zhang and Jerry Forrest, but because nobody knows who Zhili Zhang is, nobody's really going to be asking for that fight, and they can sweep it under the rug and move on. Zhili Zhang, he brings that Chinese market, so they're basically waiting for they're waiting to cash out Zhili Zhang. Of course, a few years ago, there was talking about Joshua versus Zhili Zhang in China, so that's the sort of thing they want to do with Zhili Zhang. They want to save him for a big event and basically cash him out. But Zhili Zhang, yeah, he's fun to watch, but he's no top prospect, to put it that way. he's a knockout waiting to happen. And apart from that, you've got a couple of female fights which I could give a F less about, not interested. And you have a debut on the card as well. Anthony Christopher Herrera, never heard of him. But the card itself, not particularly great, quite frankly. I think the Showtime card is much better, headlined by Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa. But the thing to look out for on this card, in my opinion, is Azinga Fusile versus Kenichi Ogawa. That is the best fight on the card, as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually looking forward to this fight right here. Should be pretty good. But the card itself is pretty average, quite frankly, but it is what it is, man. Share your thoughts below. Do you give Kambosos much of a chance against Teofimo Lopez? Or like me, do you believe Teo's going to get the job done and do it in devastating fashion? And what do you make of the card in general? Share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.